Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. And today we're doing kind of an oddly specific romance recommendation where I'm roping in a few oddly specific recommendations. I made a video quite a bit ago now that was called Forced Proximity, but it was at end of the world or survivalist or disaster situations. That's what I'd titled it back then. And it did pretty well. This video was very well loved. And it was a phase that I was going through that I've never really left since I made that video. And so I've been on the lookout for more books that did that, and some of these were recs from you guys. Some of them were books that I discovered through digging on Goodreads or Amazon, and they still fall into many categories. So that's why I'm doing this as an oddly specific, but we're going to fit a few categories into one so that we have more recs than that. So this, I am terming it as survivalist romances, but really it includes survival scenarios that are within, disaster scenarios. So plane crashes, end of the world, or let's say ship crashes. Some of these are supernatural or paranormal, and some of them are just, like I said, real disasters that could happen and then how they play out. So we're just going to go through this. I have quite a few recs for these, and we're going to start with some that you'll expect me to talk about, and then hopefully get into some that maybe you didn't think of so that I can get you something you don't. So one that I really wanted to put in this, because to me, especially rereading this book, it really does fit into a survival scenario, and it does include a ship crash at the end of the world for some of them. So I have Snared here by Tiffany Roberts. Yes, let's all ooh and ah over my beautiful fake rate book that this took ages to get, okay? These took over a year to finally ship out, but this is the beautiful copy. You're gonna have to try to find a reseller if you want it. I know it sucks, but I got one. Here it is. And the reason I'm putting this under this is because Ivy, her ship crash landed on this planet. It's been crash landed there for actually over 100 years. Hundreds of years. And when she gets rescued by Catan from the ship, he doesn't know what a human is. He doesn't know who she is. So there is a lot of language barrier. There's a lot of stuff going on in this story. But they are surviving together for this book, and eventually when we add more humans to the mix, the humans are trying to survive in this world too. So because recently the first 2 audiobooks for the series are out, the third one will be out soon, I realized that there's a lot of survival elements in this, trying to find food that the humans are able to eat, trying to stay warm, trying to communicate. There are a lot of aspects of this that fit into a survival scenario. So I wanted to put this one out there. Also, another reason to represent Tiffany Roberts. I'm obsessed with them. Absolutely. Let's show you a bit of the naked cover of this one too, just so you can continue with the cover envy, because this is it's beautiful. Okay, these books are beautiful. I'm so glad. It was totally worth the wait to get these because they're just gorgeous. Okay, next, sticking with kind of the creature feature, I of course have to talk about the Monstrous series by Lily Mayne, because these ones literally are apocalypse series, and the last time I filmed one of these videos, I hadn't made this one yet. There are currently 7 books out in the series with more to come still, but it starts off with Monstrous, and we're in this post-apocalyptic world where monsters are now among the people, and some of the monsters are just animals, and some of them are people. Some of them are sentient beings who are just trying to go about their business as well. And then we have Win the Soul Eater, who has a duty that no one knows about, and a duty that makes people think that he's going around slaughtering innocent people. And his eye gets caught, excuse me, by a soldier named Danny, who is supposed to kind of interrogate him for the military, but that's not quite how it goes. And so this ends up being kind of a survivalist scenario for the 2 of them, because they end up traveling together. This also has road trip vibes. A lot of apocalypse romance can also have road trip vibes to it. So yeah, I really, really love this series. They're also just the sweetest monster boys you've ever read, okay? Just the sweetest, okay? They're so great. But Win is super grumpy, super I I only like you vibes. Like, it's adorable. I love it. So highly recommend this series. I know this cover doesn't always work for people, but listen to the audiobook if you want to. The first 3 audiobooks are out, which is great. And yeah, highly recommend. It's a great time. All right, then a series if you watch my channel, had to show up. And I was thrilled to know that the last time I did this video, the Forced Proximity one, there was only 2 books out in this. And at the time, the author had a note in the back of the book that she was going to write more books. But there was no date or time or plan for it. And then luckily in 2022, she announced 3 more plus more books in the series. And so I have 3 more books in the Kindle series to talk about, of course. So the last time I did this video, we talked about Last Light and Haven, which is kind of the beginning of this world. So then there is Princess, and this one is an age gap bodyguard romance. And this one, they're living in a shelter in the beginning. Like she was a very wealthy girl, hence her nickname being Princess. And her father actually had a spot in a bunker set aside. And when the meteor is hitting Earth, which up to this point, we didn't know a ton about the meteor because that's not how the story goes. It's not really about the science fiction elements or like how we got here. It's about the after effects, how we live through it. And so in the beginning of this, she's getting torn out of college and forced into this bunker, and this bodyguard, Grant, I think is his name, is the one sent to get her. And then we skip ahead some years to see now what the after effects of this are. Then there is Embers. Now, this is the one that gets a lot of people excited because this one is a boyfriend's dad. I don't even want to call him an ex-boyfriend. Like, it's a dead boyfriend, okay? Right in the beginning of this book, our poor sad boy like dies from the lung disease that everyone is getting from, you know, the after effects of this meteor hitting. There's a lot of dust and chemicals in the air, and he dies from it. And so she ends up trapped in a cabin for years with her dead boyfriend's dad. And, you know, this man, Cal, who's left, he feels so much guilt for any feelings or any joy he might find with his dead son's girl. Like, it just makes him feel horrible. And so a lot of this one is them kind of working through his like issues. But the way that Claire Kent writes her like tortured men just does things to me. So it still works for me. It works for me so good. So, and then her most recent one, this one is actually a single dad and involves, again, being trapped in a cabin. So this one actually starts with, there is like 11 people in a hunting cabin, and then we jump ahead 4 years and there's only 3 people left. And it is Zed and his 4-year-old daughter, and then his like stepbrother's stepdaughter. Is that how it works? I'm not quite sure. Maybe it's his younger brother. I don't know. But basically for the heroine, this was her stepdad's younger brother. So it'd be like her step uncle kind of, but he's only like 10 years older than her, whereas like her stepdad was like 25 years older than her. And in the beginning of this apocalypse, like him and his girlfriend have a baby, and then like the girlfriend dies. And so it's just these 3 left trapped. And so everything they do is to try to help this little girl survive. And, you know, at some point they're going to cross paths with our other survivors we've met. So yeah, this one is a bit shorter of one too, but I liked this one so much. So the happiest ending is just to survive. So yeah, that is the Kindle series, which I always will recommend, okay? I recommend even if you don't really love survival romances, but you love like mutual pining and like grumpy heroes, like so good. Okay, now we'll do a couple that are like real life disasters. I have a few of those, and then we'll go back in to kind of some apocalypse ones, but I wanted to spread it up. So we have, and this one gets mentioned so, like, it used to be talked about all the time, and now it hasn't been mentioned in so long. And this one is like gut-wrenching, but still has an HEA. So this one is On the Island by Tracy Garvis Graves, and this book is, oh, it's so good. So our heroine is, I think, in her like late 20s, and she's basically a like tutor slash like independent like teacher. And our hero, at the start of this, he, I think, is 16, and he had cancer as a teen. And so that has passed now, but he's behind in school because he had to drop out of school for a while. And so she's his tutor, helping get him up to, the grade that he's supposed to be at. And so because his family is very wealthy, they are going to have this, private tutor come on vacation with them and help teach him while they're there. And so her and this teenager, they are on a small prop plane when there is an accident and they crash land. Of course, the pilot dies and they're stuck on an island. Now, again, if you notice the age, it starts when he's 16 and she's, let's say, 28. Again, I can't quite remember her age. But he's 16, his name is TJ, and, okay, so she's 30. So Anna's 30 and he's 16. And they're trapped on this island. And they're trapped there for years. So there's a lot of worries that these two have to deal with. Number one, are we going to get found? How are we going to survive? Immediate survival is important. Number two, will his cancer come back? Is that something we have to worry about? And then there's this growing attraction between the two of them, as he's fully maturing, as she's, they've come to rely on each other so much. Are they basically the last man and woman around? And why is no one finding them? How long are we stuck here? Do we have to fight these feelings forever if we're the only two here? So there isn't anything sexual between them until he's over 18. But what I loved about this book, what I really, really loved about this book is that, yes, we fit into those moral grounds if you want to. If you're like, ooh, I'll feel really uncomfortable if anything happens when he's under 18. But what's fascinating about this book is the look into, does age mean anything anymore when this young man is the one you're relying on, is you are mutually protectors and providers for each other. You're the only two surviving. Does it even matter age anymore at that point? That's what I liked. But again, yes, there's nothing inappropriate that happens before he's 18. But does that matter? Are they keeping track of the days right? Are we sure he's really past his 18th year before anything happens when they're on this island? Does that even matter? And yeah, so this is really beautiful. I love this story. And I always like to bring it up when it can fit somewhere because, it's not one that gets talked about much anymore, but I still, scenes from this book still live rent-free in my head because it was just such a powerful story. And again, it does have an HEA. It is a romance, even though it was, done by Penguin. This was done by Penguin, which is just crazy to me. But when did this come out? This has got to be an older book. Yeah, 2012. This is over 10 years now, but love that book. Then we have Withering Hope by Layla Hagen. Another plane crash. This one, our heroine has a fiance, and I can't remember. I don't think he's on the plane with her. I think she's flying to meet him, and it's just her and their chartered private pilot, and they go down in the rainforest, and they're stuck together and have to survive. So this one's basic. There's not a ton to pick apart with this one, but it does have the aspect of she's engaged to someone else. Are they going to die out there? Is it okay to seek comfort when you might never see your loved one again? And I don't normally enjoy that kind of angsty, is she going to cheat with this person? But this was one that, it worked because of the survival scenario. And literally, they're facing death together. So, yeah. But I know some people don't have as big a problem with cheating. It is something that's tough for me. But this type of book made me really think about, when would it be okay? And if it's not okay, do we still do what we need to do? What feels right when we're barely alive and we need a morale boost? I don't know. It was interesting. Then we have Dane's Storm by Mia Sheridan. And this was, only the second Mia Sheridan that I'd read, because I'd read the one everybody loves, which just went poof out of my head. But that was the only one that I'd read. And then this one I'd heard was a plane crash romance, and so I was really excited. But this one's really interesting because it's also a second chance romance. There is a whole setup that gets these two on the plane together, but basically the hero has a pilot license and he's gonna fly her someplace because there's some stuff they have to deal with. I know I'm being super vague for it, But they get in a plane crash, like, in a snowy location. And this one takes place, I think, basically within, like, 2 or 3 days. So this one doesn't have a super extended time, but it's very powerful in how, you know, these two, they are a divorced couple, and the scenario they find themselves in really makes them face, like, why they broke up. Because, spoiler for a little bit, but it is a trigger warning as well, these two lost a child together, and, you know, that kind of led to their breakup, and this traumatic event that they go through really kind of brings them back together. So I enjoyed that a lot. Then I want to mention The Queen of All That Dies by Laura Thalassa. This one is kind of an end of the world romance, also a bit like paranormal because there are like some elements in it. This series was tough for me because I was fascinated by it. I absolutely was. And it's because I loved the hero or the anti-hero in this. Like, this dude, you want to talk morally gray, you want to talk morality chain, it's this guy, okay? It's this king in this world. And our heroine is actually a soldier, and she gets drawn into a political deal where she needs to marry this king to help with, like, peace. And then a whole bunch of stuff goes down. What was kind of tough about this trilogy for me was the heroine. Because something I've talked about before, I'm okay with the enemies to lovers vibe. I'm okay with the resist, but the sexual tension is there. But at some point in a story, I really want the heroine to get on board. I need her to stop seeing the guy as the most evil person ever, but oh, he's able to fuck me really good, so I just deal with it. At some point, I want her to, like, be on his side as well. And I don't always feel like that happens soon enough. And particularly because Laura Thalassa likes to write trilogies about stuff that I don't think needs trilogies, but that's a conversation for a different video. There were parts of this that got tough for me. But 2 positives. Number 1, again, I loved this hero, and I loved when we got his POV and the things he was thinking, and he's so, like, touch her and you die, and he's so possessive, and I just eat all that stuff up. I just love it. And then I also, like, the whole trilogy is out, so I was able to binge it kind of all at once, and then some of the angst that I feel for when she does these trilogies with cliffhangers, you know, wasn't there, because I was able to read it all at once, which was what I needed. So yeah. All right, then we have a very, very, very dark one, okay? So dark. We have The Land of the Beautiful Dead by R.Lee Smith. So R.Lee Smith is someone that I heard about through Tiffany Roberts and Pam Godwin. They both talk about this author quite a bit. And this book just, oh, it's so intense. This one has paranormal elements. This one has aspects of, like, a zombie plague type scenario. That's what the Beautiful Dead part of it is. And then we have this ruler who is this, like, evil, malevolent ruler. And the heroine goes to make a deal with him to try to get help for the humans. And the way that he makes these deals is, like, they're sexual deals that he makes. And so she knows when she goes to make this deal that she's going to be asked to, like, be his mistress to get it. And then there is this crazy, like, morality and survival and machinations between the both of them, and just, like, there's politics and court intrigue, and this book was a complete and total mindfuck. But also the romance was, like, so toxic, and I just didn't want to let it go, and I didn't know how there would be an HEA. And, well, there is an HEA. R.Lee Smith's books still leave me greatly disturbed when I'm done. But if you want to really dive into, like, a deep, dark romance that will really make you rethink how you think about who deserves an HEA, I really recommend this book for you specifically if that's a journey you want to try. Because, wow, this was disturbing. But it fits into this category, so there you go. Then we have Deal with the Devil by Kit Rocha. This was one I read recently for Patreon, and I want to continue this. There's 3 books in this series. All of them are on Anyplay, by the way, so I'm going to be continuing it soon, actually. But this one is about there are some super soldiers who they used to work for the government, and the government, to make them super soldiers, they basically get a super soldier serum. And if they were to not be able to get an injection every so many days, they will basically detox and like die off of this. So they have a very short amount of time to get some more of this stuff. But they have defected because they've discovered that the government's doing bad things. And then we have our heroine and her group of her girl gang, who they have kind of this like group set up where like they look after their community, they make sure they stay fed, and in doing so they do some mercenary work, helping out, doing some contracting work to get food and like money for the people that they all look out for. And they themselves also used to be experiments for the government, but we find out more of that throughout the book. And so yeah, that's like all I really want to say about this. This was a romance. It did have spicy scenes in it. And yeah, I can't wait to read more of this series because there's so much more that we can still visit with it for sure. And then the last one I want to mention is Afterglow by Maria Monroe. I just read this one the other day. This one is a straight up, like, there was a disease, it wiped out a lot of people, now the other people are the most dangerous thing to us, blah, 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 blah. It's like Walking Dead, but without the zombies. Like, the people who died from the disease aren't coming back from the dead, so a lot of people are wiped out. It has a certain kind of vibe, the same as Last Light, but not as emotionally moving to me. So this one didn't end up being, like, this is a 3.5-star book for me, I will say that. But when I was putting together this list, I want to give lots of options because I know how difficult it is to find these recs. As you'll see, you know, of course, if you haven't yet watched the Forced Proximity one I made about this, I do have a bunch more in there. And these books, they can be really hit or miss, but this one involves our heroine, who she is a teacher, the world has gone to shit, and she wants to get to her grandma, who her grandma was a prepper. And so her grandmother has a home in the country with literally like guns and food and protection, and that's where her parents and her brother are, and so she needs to get there. And she noticed that her neighbor has a motorcycle, and she knows that that will be the best way to get there, and so she tries to steal his motorcycle. Lucky for her, he's not a rapist or a killer, and he actually agrees to help take her there when she promises, like, my grandma would give you some in food and help in exchange for this. And then they make their travel there. So there are some great scenes in this, particularly more towards the second half of it. Like, I honestly was going to give this a harsher rating because I was rolling my eyes at a lot. But then the story kind of evened out, and I liked some of the character growth I saw with them. The biggest issue for me is that this story went too quickly. It really, really did. Like, the story was told way too quickly. We rushed a lot of things. And, like, it only takes place in about a week's time, and they're saying I love you by the end. And that's difficult for me when we're saying that quickly. But it was still a good time, and it's one that doesn't have super intense scenes of, like, violence or, like, assault in it. There is one, like, attempted assault at one point, but nothing that was, like, too painful. So yeah, wanted to recommend that for sure. So yeah, I hope you have found from this some new survivalist or end of the world romances you want to give a try to. I will have all of them linked down below if you want to grab them off of my Amazon affiliate links. Let me know some of your favorite survivalist romances. Make sure you check out the other video I made with those recs too, because there are some very famous ones that I haven't mentioned that are in that video for sure, because it was my first one. So thank you so much for watching, friends, and I'll see you next time. Bye.